I want to talk about Justin Herbert because what he's done this season has been nothing short of spectacular. Whenever head coach Jim Harbaugh gets an opportunity, he makes it very clear to the media, to the fans, of how well Herbert's been playing. And it just goes above and beyond his statistics. He was dealing with a high ankle sprain, and he goes out there and he plays through it and he puts his team into a situation to win. Herbert, it's not like he has the best weapons in the world. He's throwing to Lad McConkey, who I thought should have been a first round pick out of Georgia. He's a stud. Quentin Johnson, another former first round pick, who of course is having by far his best season, only his second season. But Johnson, he has more touchdown catches than he did all of last year. He seems to be more comfortable, and you can tell all the work he put in the offseason. And then Josh Palmer, who of course was a former day two pick for us. The offensive line has also been extremely inconsistent this year. The tackle play has been spectacular with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, but the interior has just been flat out bad, if I'm being honest with you. But Herbert, he's gone out there, and since week 7, you can argue he's been the best quarterback in all of football, and I wouldn't even disagree. We're talking about a 95.0 PFF grade, which is first, 13 big time throws, which is first, and that's huge. And then 0 turnover worthy plays, which is even crazier. So it just gets better and better the farther you go down the list. Herbert, he also made NFL history with the most completions in the first 5 years of a career. Herbert, guys, he missed 4 games last year. Of course, he started off the season with an injury because he got hurt in camp and then he ended up getting a high ankle sprain. So he has 2 injuries that he's dealing with, and he's just going out there and he's just been a warrior, and he's playing the best football of his career, at least in my opinion. This is the best I've ever seen Herbert. Sure, he's had stretches where he's throwing for 300, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, but I'm talking about just from an efficiency standpoint, taking care of the football, making those big time throws, and helping your team win football games. The Chargers, we know to this point, they are a run first team, but that doesn't take away from Herbert's greatness and what he's done this year. You want to be able to run the ball. The best teams in football are run first teams. The Chiefs, they're a run first team. The Ravens are a run first team, right? We know the Eagles love to run the ball as much as anyone. So there's nothing wrong about being a run first team. That's how you win games, because you go deep into the season, it gets colder, and in the playoffs, if you can't run the ball, you're not winning. You're not doing anything. And that's what Harbaugh has established. Bringing in Greg Roman, nobody calls better run plays than Roman. Kyle Shanahan, maybe, but I mean, Roman is probably just a little bit better. That's how good he is. So I'm just been impressed. Gus Edwards, he ends up coming back 5.5 yards per carry. J.K. Dobbins didn't have the greatest game, but you can tell that the rushing attack looked a lot more comfortable and consistent with Edwards out there versus Vidal, the rookie, and of course Hassan Haskins, who did find the end zone, but those guys just were never able to consistently get it. Those guys were never able to consistently get it going with Dobbins, or at least to compliment him, right? Back to Herbert. I mean, this record, it definitely is something that Herbert is going to be proud of. It's probably the last thing on his mind right now is a record. He's trying to just win games, win a Super Bowl. But I just thought I'd mention it because to me, it's really cool as a fan. The reason why I started this channel was because of Justin Herbert. A lot of you guys, probably most of you don't know that. I made this channel back February 2022. So we're coming up on 3 years just about, where I've been covering the Chargers. And the reason was Herbert and just what I saw him have the potential to be. And that was one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I just remember watching Chargers games, watching Herbert. I never was that big into football, more of a basketball, more of a baseball guy, but he just got me into the game. And this is my first team channel. So it's a big deal, man. Like, it's a big honor. Charger fans are super cool. And yeah, I've got Charger merch, man. I just love covering this team every single day. For Herbert, I mean, he already has 1,772 completions in his career. The Bolts, they have 8 games left. The Chargers have 8 more games. So Herbert's going to be able to build off of the record. But in terms of his game against the Tennessee Titans, 14 of 18 for 164 yards, had that 16-yard touchdown pass to Quentin Johnston. But his game stood out much more than that. That's why you can't just look at the box score and talk about a game or have an opinion. You've got to watch the full thing, because what Herbert did with his legs, 9 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown, which came on a fourth down play designed for Herbert to run the ball on the goal line. He ended up swinging right, juking out former teammate Sebastian Joseph Day, then weaved his way through a handful of other Titan defenders to score from 4 yards out. This is why Herbert is so dangerous. We know he's got probably the biggest arm in football, right up there with Allen, Mahomes, and Anthony Richardson. But when he's able to use that mobility, maneuver the pocket, just escape sacks, he's able to throw the ball deep down the field. Of course, he's very smart, knows where to go with it, making plays. Justin Herbert was at his best in this one. Again, giving your team a chance to win the game. The first half was bad. There was a blown coverage. There was a 41-yard touchdown to Kevin Ridley. The Chargers, at best, were mediocre at running the football. They weren't able to get anything going. And the defense, it held them in it in their defense. Jesse Miner deserves a lot of credit, as much credit as anyone else that we're going to talk about on this channel and in this video specifically. But it's just Herbert seems like whenever he's expected to do something, that's what he does. Like the Cardinals game, which was a loss, but he goes out there, of course, and what does he do, guys? He throws for 349 yards. The game against the Saints throws for 279. Cleveland, 282. I mean, previously, guys, that was probably Herbert's best game of the year, if I'm being completely honest with you. And then in this one, the yards were down, but it's, again, taking care of the football. The Chargers dominating time of possession. Herbert was efficient. What was he, 14 of 18, I believe, at the top of my head? I said right? Yeah, 14 of 18. So that's the brilliance of Justin Herbert. He now has a team and a culture around him that is working. It's still early, but the Chargers are 6-3. But there was two reasons why. Was many reasons why the Chargers brought in Jim Harbaugh to be their head coach, but some of the biggest ones were increasing the floor of this team. Now, the Chargers have had some good seasons. I know it hasn't resulted in a Super Bowl, but they've had some good seasons. But they've also had some bad seasons. So trying to be consistent. 6-3 is exactly where you want to be. Now, of course, eventually we want to see in the Harbaugh era the Chargers be the number one team in the NFL statistically. But the first year to be 6-3, it's a lot better than we've seen with Herbert. I can tell you that much. But now going into the second thing is the ceiling, and we're about to find out the Chargers' ceiling because their next game is versus the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's going to be difficult to find a team as good as the Bengals that are 4-6. I know you are what your record shows, but the Bengals are truly a couple of plays away from being one of the best teams record-wise in football. And if you disagree, you obviously haven't seen them play. So you cannot go into this game with a mindset of the Bengals are 4-6. Yes, they can't run the ball. Their defense isn't that great, but they can put up points in a hurry with Chase Brown, Jamar Chase. T. Higgins was out last week against the Ravens. No clue if he's playing in this one. Hopefully he isn't, if I'm being honest, because dealing with T and Chase is about as hard as it gets in football. Their guys are right up there, of course, with Waddle, Reek, right up there with I'm looking at Kupp and Nakua, Godwin, and Evans. I mean, these guys are unbelievably good. The offensive line for the Bengals is not great, if I'm being real. I do think the Chargers win this game. Will it be close? Yeah. Probably be decided by a score. But again, we're talking about November football, and I don't know if there's a better quarterback in the history of football in November than Joe Burrow. I mean, he's a beast that just awakes. I mean, he's like Lazarus, or he rises from the dead, has a terrible start to the season, and then turns into the GOAT in November. So it'll probably be high scoring. Not a shootout, right? This won't be a shootout. The Chargers defense is very, very good. Their defensive line in that second half got going. The Chargers have 13 sacks in the past 2 weeks. Burrow was under a lot of pressure. He was sacked a ton in his last game against the Ravens, and the Chargers have a better front, at least in my opinion, than the Ravens do. So I do think they'll get after Burrow. They'll make it tough. This isn't going to be a shootout. It's not going to be 34-30, something like that. Probably be 24-20, really close game. But the Chargers don't care how they win as long as they win, which I think they will. I think the Bengals are a pretty good matchup for them, if I'm being honest, because the thing with the Chargers is defensively, their linebackers make tackles, they stop plays, their defensive line gets pressure, their cornerbacks are tight and sticky in coverage, being able to deflect the football and just break up passes, of course, defend passes. So there's not really a weakness on the Chargers defense. The biggest weakness all year has been health. Boza leaving game early, Mac playing just 4 snaps in that first quarter. That's the thing. Can they all be on the field? We saw Derwin get suspended in that Chiefs game. So they just need to get guys on the field because when they do, I mean, they're already number one in terms of scoring defense. They're pretty much 1 or 2 in every defensive statistical category. Number 1 in points allowed, number 2 in red zone defense. The Bengals is the biggest test, though. If the Chargers can shut down the Bengals, I mean, I'm going to start talking about a Super Bowl. Like, I legitimately am. I don't care if they're under 500. I mean, if they can shut down the Bengals, the Ravens couldn't even shut down the Bengals offense, and we're putting the Ravens in the Super Bowl category. And the Ravens have one more win than the Chargers. So it's like playoff hopes growing without question. The Chargers have a current 81% chance to make the playoffs, 6-3, second in the AFC West. The only teams below them, you've got the Broncos who are 5-5, Colts are 4-6, Bengals are 4-6. The Dolphins at 3-6 aren't technically out. They do have a 10% chance to make the playoffs, but there's not that much competition below the Chargers, if I'm being honest with you guys.